In this gripping tale, a driver faces humiliation at the hands of a wealthy passenger, only to encounter him years later with an unexpected twist. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to support our channel, please consider donating through the link in the pinned comment. Now, sit back and enjoy the story. Marcus Thornton gripped the steering wheel of his weathered taxi, his calloused hands a testament to years of hard work. The neon lights of New York City reflected off the rain-slicked streets, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced across his weary face. At 45, Marcus had spent the better part of 2 decades ferrying passengers across the bustling metropolis, each fare a step closer to his dream of owning his own fleet of cabs. As he pulled up to the curb outside a high-end restaurant in Manhattan, Marcus couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. The glittering world of the elite was so close, yet perpetually out of reach. A man in an impeccably tailored suit stumbled out of the restaurant, his arm draped around a woman whose diamond necklace probably cost more than Marcus made in a year. "Hey, you! Taxi!" The man's voice was slurred but commanding. Marcus quickly put the car in park and stepped out to help with their luggage. "Good evening, sir. Where to?" Marcus asked politely, opening the rear door. The man, who introduced himself as Alexander Blackwell III, barked out an address in the Upper East Side. As Marcus carefully maneuvered through the late-night traffic, he couldn't help but overhear the conversation in the back seat. "Can you believe the nerve of that waiter?" Alexander growled. "I should have him fired. Don't they know who I am?" The woman, clearly uncomfortable, tried to change the subject. "Darling, perhaps we should discuss this later," but Alexander was on a roll. "No, Vivian. These people need to learn their place, just like this driver here. Hey, you. What's your name?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Marcus, sir. Marcus Thornton." Alexander sneered. "Well, Marcus, let me give you some advice. People like you will never amount to anything. You're born to serve people like me. That's just the way the world works." The words stung, but Marcus kept his composure. He'd dealt with difficult passengers before, but something about Alexander's casual cruelty cut deep. As they approached a red light, Marcus caught a glimpse of Alexander's reflection in the rearview mirror. The man's eyes were cold, devoid of empathy. "I appreciate your input, Mr. Blackwell," Marcus replied evenly. "But I believe everyone has the potential to—" "Potential?" Alexander interrupted with a harsh laugh. "The only potential you have is to drive faster. I'm not paying you for life advice, you glorified chauffeur." The rest of the ride passed in tense silence. When they arrived at the luxurious apartment building, Alexander tossed a handful of crumpled bills at Marcus without even looking at him. "Keep the change," he said dismissively. "Maybe you can use it to buy yourself some ambition." As the couple disappeared into the building, Marcus sat in his taxi, hands shaking. He looked down at the messily thrown cash. It was a generous tip, but it felt like a slap in the face. For a moment, he considered throwing it away, but the reality of his situation quickly set in. He had bills to pay, a family to support. With a heavy heart, Marcus pocketed the money and pulled away from the curb. The encounter left him feeling hollow, questioning the path his life had taken. But as he drove through the city that never sleeps, a spark of determination ignited within him. Alexander Blackwell III might think he knew Marcus's potential, but Marcus swore to himself that one day, he'd prove that arrogant millionaire wrong. Little did Marcus know that this chance encounter would set in motion a series of events that would change both their lives forever. In the weeks following his encounter with Alexander Blackwell III, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation that clung to him like a second skin. The cruel words echoed in his mind during every fare, every traffic light, and every moment of silence. But instead of allowing them to crush his spirit, Marcus felt a newfound determination growing within him. One particularly slow night, Marcus found himself parked outside a public library. On a whim, he decided to step inside, drawn by the warm light spilling from its windows. As he wandered through the aisles of books, a title caught his eye. From Streets to Stocks, A Taxi Driver's Guide to Financial Freedom by Jameson Carter. Intrigued, Marcus began reading. The author, a former taxi driver himself, had built a multi-million-dollar empire through smart investments and innovative thinking. As Marcus devoured page after page, he felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest. If Jameson Carter could do it, why couldn't he? Over the next few months, Marcus became a regular at the library. He spent every free moment educating himself on finance, business strategies, and technology. He started listening to podcasts during his shifts, turning his taxi into a mobile classroom. His passengers, initially surprised by their driver's newfound knowledge, began engaging him in discussions about the stock market, emerging technologies, and economic trends. One day, a passenger named Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a professor of computer science, struck up a conversation with Marcus about artificial intelligence. Impressed by his insights, she handed him her card. "Mr. Thornton, you have a keen mind. If you're ever interested in learning more, please don't hesitate to contact me." This chance encounter opened up a new world for Marcus. He began attending free coding workshops in his spare time, discovering a natural aptitude for programming. The more he learned, the more he realized the potential for innovation in the transportation industry. As months turned into years, Marcus's life began to change. He started a blog sharing his insights on the intersection of finance, technology, and transportation. To his surprise, it gained a following. Industry professionals and fellow drivers alike found value in his unique perspective. Meanwhile, Marcus's family noticed the change in him. His wife, Sarah, initially concerned about the long hours he spent studying, became his biggest supporter when she saw the passion in his eyes. Their children, Zoe and Ethan, were inspired by their father's dedication and began taking their own education more seriously. One evening, as Marcus was helping Zoe with her math homework, an idea struck him like lightning. He envisioned a ride-sharing platform that not only connected passengers with drivers, but also provided financial education and investment opportunities for the drivers. It would be more than just a service. It would be a pathway to financial empowerment for people like him. Excitement coursed through Marcus's veins as he began sketching out his idea. He stayed up late into the night, refining the concept, researching potential competitors, and outlining a business plan. When Sarah found him asleep at the kitchen table the next morning surrounded by notes and diagrams, she knew something significant had changed. "Marcus," she said, gently shaking him awake. "What's all this?" With bleary eyes but a voice full of enthusiasm, Marcus explained his vision. Sarah listened intently, her eyes widening as she grasped the potential of his idea. "This could change everything," she whispered, squeezing his hand. Over the next few weeks, Marcus poured every spare moment into developing his concept. He reached out to Dr. Rodriguez for guidance on the technical aspects and connected with fellow drivers to gauge interest. The response was overwhelming. People were excited about the possibility of a platform that could help them build a better future. As Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror one morning, preparing for another day behind the wheel, he hardly recognized the man staring back at him. Gone was the defeated look in his eyes, replaced by a fire of determination. He thought back to Alexander Blackwell III's cutting words and allowed himself a small smile. "You were wrong about me," Marcus said to his reflection, "and I'm going to prove it to the world." Little did Marcus know that his journey was about to intersect once again with the man who had once humiliated him, in a way that neither of them could have ever anticipated. With his idea taking shape, Marcus faced his greatest challenge yet, finding the resources to turn his vision into reality. He knew that developing a sophisticated ride-sharing platform with integrated financial services would require significant capital, something he was sorely lacking. Undeterred, Marcus began pitching his idea to anyone who would listen. He attended local business meetups, startup events, and even tried his luck at a few pitch competitions. While his passion was evident, many potential investors were skeptical of a taxi driver with no formal business education or tech background. One evening, after another disappointing pitch session, Marcus found himself driving home in the rain, his spirits low. As he stopped at a red light, he noticed a man in a suit struggling with a broken umbrella. Without hesitation, Marcus pulled over. "Need a ride?" he called out. The man, introducing himself as David Chen, gratefully accepted. As they drove, Marcus couldn't help but share his idea, his enthusiasm breaking through his earlier dejection. To his surprise, David listened intently, asking insightful questions. As they reached David's destination, he handed Marcus his business card. "I'm an angel investor," David explained. "Your idea has potential. Let's set up a proper meeting." This chance encounter proved to be the break Marcus needed. David not only invested in Marcus's company, which they named Driver Up, but also introduced him to a network of tech entrepreneurs and mentors who helped refine the business model and develop the app. Over the next 2 years, Marcus worked tirelessly. By day, he continued driving his taxi, using it as a testing ground for new features and gathering feedback from passengers. By night, he collaborated with a small but dedicated team of developers and financial experts to bring Driver Up to life. The journey was far from smooth. There were countless late nights, technical hurdles, and moments of self-doubt. Sarah stood by him through it all, picking up extra shifts as a nurse to help make ends meet. Zoe and Ethan pitched in too, helping to spread the word about Driver Up among their tech-savvy friends. Finally, after months of beta testing, Driver Up was ready for launch. The app offered not just ride-sharing, but also personalized financial advice, micro-investment opportunities, and educational resources for drivers. It was everything Marcus had envisioned and more. The launch day was a blur of excitement and anxiety. Marcus watched with bated breath as the first users signed up, the first rides were requested, the first investments were made. To his amazement and relief, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Drivers praised the app's user-friendly interface and the unprecedented opportunities it offered them. Passengers appreciated the skilled, financially savvy drivers and the smooth ride experience. As word spread, Driver Up began to gain traction. Tech blogs picked up the story of the taxi driver turned CEO, and Marcus found himself giving interviews and speaking at conferences. His unique perspective and genuine desire to empower others resonated with people across the industry. 1 year after the launch, Driver Up had expanded to 5 major cities, with plans for international expansion in the works. The company's valuation soared, and Marcus, the once struggling taxi driver, now found himself at the helm of a rapidly growing tech company. Despite his success, Marcus never forgot his roots. He made it a point to regularly drive for Driver Up, staying connected with the day-to-day experiences of his drivers. He implemented profit-sharing programs and educational initiatives, ensuring that the company's success benefited everyone involved. On the evening of Driver Up's 2nd anniversary, Marcus stood on the rooftop of their new office building, overlooking the city he had driven through for so many years. Sarah stood beside him, her hand in his. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked, gesturing at the glittering skyline. Marcus shook his head, a mix of disbelief and pride washing over him. "Never in my wildest dreams," he admitted. "But you know what? This is just the beginning." As they stood there, Marcus's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an invitation to speak at an exclusive tech conference in Silicon Valley. The keynote speaker, the invitation noted, would be none other than Alexander Blackwell III, now the CEO of a major tech conglomerate. Marcus felt a jolt of recognition, memories of that fateful night years ago flooding back. He hadn't thought about Alexander in years, but now, faced with the prospect of seeing him again, Marcus realized how much he had changed and how much he had to prove. With a deep breath, Marcus accepted the invitation. Little did he know that this conference would lead to a confrontation that would shake both men to their cores, forcing them to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about success, dignity, and the true measure of a person's worth. The Silicon Valley Tech Summit was a whirlwind of innovation, networking, and cutting-edge ideas. Marcus, who, now a respected figure in the tech world, found himself moving through the conference with a confidence he never thought possible. DriverUp had a prominent booth showcasing their latest features, and Marcus was scheduled to give a talk on empowering the gig economy through financial technology. As he navigated the bustling conference hall, Marcus couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and apprehension about potentially encountering Alexander Blackwell III. He had spotted Alexander's name and face on various promotional materials throughout the venue, but their paths hadn't crossed yet. On the second day of the conference, Marcus was participating in a panel discussion on the future of urban transportation when he noticed a familiar face in the audience. Alexander Blackwell III sat in the front row, his expression a mixture of boredom and disdain. Their eyes met briefly, and Marcus saw a flicker of recognition in Alexander's gaze, quickly replaced by confusion. After the panel, Marcus was approached by numerous attendees eager to discuss DriverUp's innovative approach. As he engaged with them, he peripherally noticed Alexander hovering nearby, seemingly waiting for an opportunity to approach. Finally, as the crowd thinned, Alexander made his move. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying the same entitled tone Marcus remembered from years ago. "You're Marcus Thornton, aren't you?" The CEO of DriverUp. Marcus turned to face him, a calm smile on his face. "Yes, that's right. And you're Alexander Blackwell III. It's been a while, hasn't it?" Alexander's brow furrowed. "Have we met before? I don't recall." "We have," Marcus replied evenly. "About 7 years ago. I was your taxi driver one night in New York. You were quite memorable." The color drained from Alexander's face as recognition dawned. "Oh, I see," he stammered, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, it seems you've come a long way since then." "I have," Marcus agreed. "Thanks in part to you, actually." Alexander's eyebrows shot up. "Me? How so?" Marcus took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "The things you said to me that night, they were cruel, but they lit a fire under me. They made me realize I had potential I hadn't tapped into yet." Alexander had the grace to look embarrassed. I'm not sure what to say. I was a different person back then." "Weren't we all?" Marcus replied. "Look, Mr. Blackwell, I didn't come here to make you feel bad or to gloat. I came here to learn, to share ideas, and to continue growing. Maybe we could start fresh." Alexander seemed to consider this for a moment before nodding slowly. "I'd like that, Mr. Thornton. Perhaps we could discuss your company over dinner. I'm intrigued by your approach to driver empowerment." As they made plans to meet later, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The angry, humiliated taxi driver from 7 years ago was gone, replaced by a confident, successful entrepreneur who had turned adversity into opportunity. That evening, as Marcus and Alexander sat down to dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than either had expected. They discussed their respective journeys, the challenges of the tech industry, and their visions for the future. As the meal progressed, Alexander's facade of arrogance began to crack. "I have to admit, Marcus," he said, swirling the wine in his glass, "I've been feeling lost lately. My company is successful, but it feels hollow. Seeing what you've built, the purpose behind it, it's made me question a lot of things." Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. "How so?" Alexander sighed. "I've spent my whole life chasing wealth and status, thinking that was the key to happiness. But looking at you, seeing the passion in your eyes when you talk about empowering others, I realize I've been missing something crucial." As their dinner continued late into the night, a surprising partnership began to form. Alexander, impressed by DriverUp's mission, proposed a collaboration between their companies. He saw an opportunity to use his resources and connections to help scale DriverUp's impact globally. Marcus EPIs, while initially skeptical, saw the potential for transformative change. By joining forces, they could reach even more drivers and make an even bigger difference in people's lives. As they shook hands at the end of the evening, Both men felt a sense of possibility they hadn't experienced in years. The taxi driver and the arrogant passenger had come full circle, now standing as equals, poised to reshape the future of work and financial empowerment. Little did they know that their newfound partnership would soon be tested by unforeseen challenges that would push them both to their limits and force them to confront the true meaning of success, redemption, and human dignity. The months following the Silicon Valley Tech Summit were a whirlwind of activity for Marcus and Alexander. Their partnership initially met with skepticism from both companies. Boards quickly proved to be a game-changer in the industry. DriverUp's innovative platform, combined with Alexander's vast resources and connections, allowed for rapid expansion into new markets. However, as the companies grew closer, tensions began to simmer beneath the surface. Marcus's grassroots, driver-focused approach often clashed with Alexander's more traditional, profit-driven strategies. While they managed to find common ground most of the time, their fundamental differences in philosophy became increasingly apparent. One crisp autumn morning, Marcus arrived at the DriverUp headquarters to find the office in chaos. Overnight, a major data breach had occurred, exposing sensitive information of millions of drivers and passengers. As the team scrambled to contain the damage, Marcus received a call from a panicked Alexander. "Marcus, have you seen the news?" Alexander's voice was strained. "This is a disaster. We need to issue a statement immediately." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I agree, but we need to focus on fixing the problem first. Our priority should be protecting our users." "Protecting our stock price is the priority," Alexander snapped. "We need to downplay this, assure investors it's not as bad as it seems." Marcus felt a familiar sense of disappointment creeping in. "Alexander, that's not the right approach. We need to be transparent, take responsibility, and show our users that we're doing everything we can to make this right." Their disagreement escalated into a heated argument, with Alexander insisting on a strategy of minimization and Marcus advocating for honesty and accountability. In the end, they issued separate statements, creating confusion in the media and further eroding trust in the platform. As the crisis unfolded, Marcus threw himself into the recovery efforts. He personally reached out to affected drivers, set up a dedicated support team, and worked tirelessly with cybersecurity experts to strengthen their systems. Alexander, on the other hand, focused on damage control with investors and the media, often making promises that Marcus knew would be difficult to keep. The strain on their partnership began to show. Board meetings became battlegrounds, with Marcus and Alexander frequently at odds over the company's direction. The once promising collaboration now seemed to be teetering on the brink of collapse. One evening, as Marcus was leaving the office after another grueling day, he received a text from Sarah. "Turn on the news," it read. "Now." With a sense of dread, Marcus flipped on the TV in his office. His heart sank as he saw Alexander's face on the screen, standing at a podium. "And so, it is with deep regret that I announce my resignation as CEO of Blackwell Technologies," Alexander was saying. "Recent events have made it clear that my vision no longer aligns with the best interests of the company or its partners." Marcus stood frozen, watching as Alexander fielded questions from reporters. It was clear that this was more than just a resignation. It was Alexander distancing himself from the data breach scandal and, by extension, from DriverUp. As the press conference ended, Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Alexander. "I suppose you saw," Alexander said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "I did," Marcus replied, trying to keep his tone neutral. "Why didn't you tell me you were planning this?" There was a long pause before Alexander spoke again. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I thought this was the best way to protect both our companies, to give DriverUp a chance to recover without my baggage weighing it down." Marcus sank into his chair, feeling the weight of the situation. "That wasn't your decision to make alone, Alexander. We were supposed to be partners." "I know," Alexander said softly. I guess old habits die hard. I thought I had changed, but when the pressure was on, I fell back on my old ways of thinking, protecting myself, my reputation. As they talked, Marcus realized that despite everything, he felt a strange sense of empathy for Alexander. The man who had once seemed so invincible was now sounding lost, vulnerable. And what will you do now? Marcus asked. I don't know, Alexander admitted. For the first time in my life, I don't have a plan. But I do know one thing. I owe you an apology, Marcus. A real one. Not just for this, but for everything. Starting from that night in the taxi. As their conversation continued late into the night, both men found themselves reevaluating their journeys, their partnership, and their understanding of true success. The data breach and its aftermath had exposed cracks in their relationship, but it had also created an opportunity for genuine growth and redemption. Little did they know that this crisis would set the stage for the most challenging and transformative phase of their lives, one that would test their resilience, their values, and their capacity for change in ways they never could have imagined. In the wake of Alexander's resignation and the data breach scandal, DriverUp found itself at a crossroads. The company's reputation had taken a significant hit, and Marcus knew that rebuilding trust would be an uphill battle. However, he was determined to stay true to the principles that had guided him from the beginning. Marcus decided to take a radical approach to crisis management. He announced a company-wide transparency initiative, opening up DriverUp's operations to unprecedented scrutiny. He invited independent auditors to review their security protocols, held town halls with drivers and passengers, and even started a weekly podcast where he candidly discussed the company's challenges and progress. While this approach initially drew skepticism from industry insiders, it slowly began to resonate with the public. People appreciated Marcus's honesty and his genuine commitment to making things right. Gradually, DriverUp started to regain its footing. Meanwhile, Alexander found himself adrift. For the first time in his life, he wasn't defined by his position or wealth. The experience was both terrifying and oddly liberating. He spent weeks soul-searching, reflecting on his past actions and the person he wanted to be. One day, out of the blue, Alexander called Marcus. I've been thinking, he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I want to make amends, not just with words, but with actions. I want to help. If you'll let me. Marcus was surprised but intrigued. What did you have in mind? Alexander's proposal was unexpected. He wanted to go back to basics, to become a DriverUp driver himself. I need to understand the people I've looked down on for so long, he explained. I want to see the world from their perspective. After careful consideration, Marcus agreed, on the condition that Alexander's identity would be kept secret from other drivers and passengers. And so began Alexander's journey of redemption. The transition wasn't easy. Alexander, used to a life of luxury, struggled with the long hours and the physical demands of the job. He faced rude passengers, navigated traffic jams, and dealt with the day-to-day challenges that he had never considered before. But slowly, he began to change. Alexander started to see his passengers as individuals with their own stories and struggles. He learned to find joy in small acts of kindness, helping an elderly passenger with their groceries, offering a sympathetic ear to someone having a bad day. He began to understand the value of hard work in a way he never had before. As weeks turned into months, Alexander's experiences as a driver began to shape his worldview. He started to see the flaws in the system he had once championed, and he developed a deep respect for the drivers he had once dismissed. One night, after a particularly grueling shift, Alexander called Marcus. I get it now, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I finally understand what you've been trying to do with DriverUp. It's not just about making money or disrupting an industry. It's about dignity. It's about giving people the tools to build better lives for themselves. Marcus smiled, feeling a sense of vindication. That's exactly it, Alexander. I'm glad you see it now. As Alexander's journey of self-discovery continued, He and Marcus began to rebuild their partnership on a new foundation of mutual understanding and shared values. They started brainstorming ways to improve DriverUp, not just as a business but as a force for positive change in society. Their collaboration led to the development of new features for the app, including a mentorship program that paired experienced drivers with newcomers, and a partnership with local community colleges to offer discounted courses to drivers looking to further their education. The story of Alexander's transformation, once it became public, captured the imagination of the media and the public. It became a powerful narrative of redemption and change, further boosting DriverUp's image as a company that truly cared about its people. As DriverUp continued to grow and evolve, Marcus and Alexander found themselves at the forefront of a new movement in corporate culture, one that prioritized empathy, social responsibility, and human dignity alongside profitability. However, their journey was far from over. As DriverUp's influence grew, so did the challenges they faced. They were about to encounter a series of events that would test their newfound partnership, their principles, and the very foundation of the company they had built together. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, both Marcus and Alexander felt ready to face whatever came their way, together. As DriverUp's influence grew, so did the scrutiny it faced. The company's innovative approach to empowering drivers and its commitment to transparency had disrupted the traditional ride-sharing industry, making powerful enemies along the way. One crisp autumn morning, Marcus awoke to a flurry of urgent messages. A consortium of traditional taxi companies and rival ride-sharing services had filed a massive lawsuit against DriverUp, alleging unfair business practices and violation of labor laws. The lawsuit threatened not just the company's financial stability, but the very model of driver empowerment that Marcus and Alexander had worked so hard to build. As news of the lawsuit broke, DriverUp's stock price plummeted. Investors panicked, and some board members began pushing for a settlement that would essentially dismantle the company's unique features. Marcus and Alexander found themselves fighting on multiple fronts, in the courtroom, in the boardroom, and in the court of public opinion. Alexander, drawing on his past experiences and connections, took charge of the legal strategy. He worked tirelessly with the company's lawyers, using his insider knowledge of corporate tactics to anticipate and counter the opposition's moves. Meanwhile, Marcus focused on rallying the drivers and maintaining morale within the company. The legal battle dragged on for months, taking a toll on both men. Marcus, always the optimist, found his resolve tested as he watched the company he had built from the ground up teeter on the brink of collapse. Alexander, for his part, grappled with the guilt of knowing that many of the tactics being used against them were ones he had employed in his previous life. As the pressure mounted, cracks began to show in their partnership once again. Alexander, falling back on old habits, suggested using aggressive legal maneuvers that skirted ethical boundaries. Marcus, steadfast in his principles, refused to compromise the company's integrity, leading to heated arguments and sleepless nights. The turning point came during a particularly grueling deposition. As Marcus fielded hostile questions from the opposition's lawyers, he noticed a familiar face in the back of the room. It was Dave, one of DriverUp's earliest drivers. Dave had used the platform to put himself through night school and had recently graduated with a degree in computer science. He had come to show support, sitting quietly in the room, a silent reminder of what DriverUp truly stood for. Seeing Dave reinvigorated Marcus. In that moment, he realized that the true strength of DriverUp wasn't in its technology or its business model, but in the community it had built. He decided to change tactics. Instead of fighting the lawsuit solely in the courtroom, Marcus and Alexander took their case directly to the public. They launched a grassroots campaign, sharing stories of drivers whose lives had been transformed by DriverUp. They organized rallies in major cities, where drivers spoke about the dignity and opportunities the platform had given them. The campaign struck a chord with the public. Social media buzzed with "Darn Stand with DriverUp" hashtags, and politicians began to take notice. What had started as a corporate lawsuit evolved into a national conversation about the future of work in the gig economy. As public opinion shifted, so did the dynamics of the legal battle. Several of the smaller companies in the consortium, swayed by the public support for DriverUp, withdrew from the lawsuit. The remaining plaintiffs, facing mounting public pressure, became more open to negotiation. After weeks of intense discussions, a settlement was reached. DriverUp agreed to make some minor adjustments to its platform, but was able to preserve its core mission of driver empowerment. The company also committed to working with regulators to help shape fair policies for the evolving gig economy. As Marcus and Alexander stood before their team to announce the resolution of the lawsuit, they felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had not just saved their company, they had reaffirmed its values and purpose. "This victory doesn't belong to us," Marcus told the cheering crowd. "It belongs to every driver who believed in our vision, every passenger who supported us, and every team member who worked tirelessly to make DriverUp what it is today." Alexander, standing beside him, nodded in agreement. "We've shown that it's possible to build a successful business that prioritizes people over profits. This is just the beginning." As the celebration continued around them, Marcus and Alexander shared a quiet moment of reflection. They had weathered the storm, emerging stronger and more united than ever. But both men knew that their journey was far from over. The lawsuit had exposed vulnerabilities in their model and raised important questions about the future of work. As they looked to the future, Marcus and Alexander realized that their next challenge would be their biggest yet, reimagining the very nature of employment in the digital age. Little did they know that this endeavor would lead them to confront not just external obstacles, but their own deepest fears and assumptions about success, work, and human value. In the aftermath of the lawsuit, Marcus and Alexander found themselves at the forefront of a national conversation about the future of work. Their experiences with DriverUp had given them unique insights into both the potential and the pitfalls of the gig economy. They realized that they had an opportunity and a responsibility to help shape the future of employment in the digital age. Marcus and Alexander began by convening a series of roundtable discussions with a diverse group of stakeholders: drivers, labor experts, economists, policymakers, and even competitors. Their goal was to create a comprehensive framework for what they called dignified digital labor, a model that would provide the flexibility of gig work while ensuring fair compensation, benefits, and opportunities for growth. As they delved deeper into the complexities of labor law and economic policy, Marcus and Alexander found their perspectives evolving. Marcus, always the idealist, had to grapple with the hard realities of running a large-scale business. Alexander, on the other hand, found himself becoming increasingly passionate about workers' rights, a stance that would have been unthinkable in his previous corporate life. Their efforts culminated in the launch of the DriverUp Institute for the Future of Work, a think tank dedicated to researching and advocating for progressive labor policies in the digital age. The Institute's first major project was a pilot program that offered DriverUp workers a hybrid employment model. They could choose between traditional employment with benefits or maintain their independent contractor status with access to portable benefits and skill development programs. The pilot program was met with enthusiasm from drivers and cautious interest from industry observers. It wasn't without its challenges. Implementation was complex, and some investors worried about the impact on the company's bottom line. But Marcus and Alexander remained committed to their vision. As the pilot program unfolded, DriverUp began to see unexpected benefits. Driver retention improved significantly, and the company's reputation as a forward-thinking, worker-friendly organization attracted top talent across all departments. Other companies in the gig economy space started to take notice, with some reaching out to DriverUp for guidance on implementing similar programs. However, not everyone was pleased with these developments. A group of traditional employers, concerned about the implications of DriverUp's model for their own industries, began lobbying against the company's proposals. They argued that DriverUp's hybrid model would create an uneven playing field and force other companies to offer similar benefits, potentially disrupting entire sectors of the economy. Marcus and Alexander found themselves once again at the center of a brewing storm, but this time, they were prepared. Drawing on the lessons from their previous battles, they launched a proactive campaign to address concerns and build coalitions of support. They testified before congressional committees, wrote op-eds for major publications, and engaged in public debates with their critics. Their message was clear. The nature of work was changing, and policies needed to evolve to protect workers while fostering innovation. As the debate raged on, Marcus and Alexander's partnership faced its ultimate test. The pressure was intense, and at times, it seemed like their vision for the future of work might be slipping away. There were moments of doubt, heated arguments, and sleepless nights. But through it all, they found strength in their shared commitment to creating a more equitable future. They supported each other, challenged each other's assumptions, and pushed each other to think bigger and bolder. Their efforts began to bear fruit. Several states passed legislation inspired by DriverUp's model, creating new categories of employment that blended elements of traditional jobs with the flexibility of gig work. Other companies, seeing the success of DriverUp's approach, began implementing their own versions of hybrid employment models. As DriverUp celebrated its 10th anniversary, Marcus and Alexander stood before a crowd of thousands: drivers, employees, supporters, and even former critics. The company had grown beyond their wildest dreams, but more importantly, it had become a catalyst for change in the way society thought about work and workers' rights. 10 years ago, we set out to create a company that would empower drivers, Marcus said. Today, we're working to empower all workers, to create a future where technology enhances rather than replaces human dignity. Alexander nodded, adding, "Our journey has taught us that true success isn't measured in stock prices or market share. It's measured in the lives we've improved, the communities we've strengthened, and the positive change we've inspired." As they looked out at the sea of faces before them, Marcus and Alexander realized that their story was far from over. The future of work was still being written, and they were determined to ensure it was a future that worked for everyone. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with new challenges and opportunities. But whatever came next, they knew they would face it the way they had faced every obstacle so far. Together, with unwavering commitment to their values and an unshakable belief in the power of innovation to create positive change. As DriverUp's innovative approach to labor rights and the gig economy gained traction in the United States, Marcus and Alexander set their sights on a new frontier, expanding their model globally. They recognized that the future of work was an international issue, and they were determined to make a positive impact on a worldwide scale. Their first target was Europe, where strict labor laws and a strong tradition of workers' rights presented both challenges and opportunities. Marcus and Alexander spent months shuttling between major European capitals, meeting with policymakers, labor unions, and local business leaders. In Berlin, they faced skepticism from powerful German labor unions. In Paris, they navigated complex regulatory frameworks, and in London, they grappled with the uncertainties of a post-Brexit economy. Each city presented unique obstacles, but also opportunities to refine and adapt their model. Meanwhile, DriverUp was also making inroads in emerging markets. In India, the company partnered with local tech startups to create a platform that not only provided flexible work opportunities but also offered access to microloans and skills training. In Kenya, DriverUp worked with the government to develop a program that used the company's technology to improve public transportation infrastructure. As DriverUp's global footprint grew, so did the complexity of the challenges Marcus and Alexander faced. They had to navigate cultural differences, varying economic conditions, and a patchwork of international regulations. The stress began to take its toll, and cracks started to show in their partnership once again. Marcus, ever the idealist, pushed for rapid expansion and ambitious social programs in each new market. Alexander, drawing on his years of corporate experience, advocated for a more measured approach, arguing that they needed to ensure the company's financial stability to make a lasting impact. Their disagreements came to a head during a tense board meeting in Singapore. As they debated the company's strategy for Southeast Asia, the discussion devolved into a heated argument. Harsh words were exchanged, old wounds reopened, and for a moment, it seemed like their partnership might not survive this latest test. But as they stood there, at odds with each other in a sleek conference room overlooking the Singapore skyline, both men had a moment of clarity. They realized that their different perspectives, rather than being a weakness, were actually DriverUp's greatest strength. Marcus's visionary idealism and Alexander's pragmatic experience were both essential to the company's success. After the meeting, they took a walk through the bustling streets of Singapore, talking openly about their fears, their dreams, and their commitment to the mission they had built together. They emerged from this conversation with a renewed sense of purpose and a stronger partnership than ever before. With their bond reaffirmed, Marcus and Alexander tackled the global expansion with renewed vigor. They developed a flexible framework that allowed DriverUp to adapt its model to local conditions while maintaining its core principles of worker empowerment and ethical business practices. In Japan, they collaborated with the government to address the country's aging workforce, creating opportunities for elderly citizens to participate in the gig economy on their own terms. In Brazil, they worked with local communities to develop a ride-sharing system that complemented and enhanced existing public transportation networks. As DriverUp's influence grew, so did the attention from international bodies. The United Nations invited Marcus and Alexander to speak about the future of work at a special session of the General Assembly. Their address, which outlined a vision for a more equitable and sustainable global economy, received a standing ovation and sparked discussions at the highest levels of international governance. However, their success also attracted powerful opponents. A coalition of multinational corporations, threatened by DriverUp's worker-centric model, launched a coordinated campaign to discredit the company and lobby for restrictions on its operations. Marcus and Alexander found themselves embroiled in a high-stakes global battle, fighting not just for their company, but for their vision of a more just and equitable world. They faced legal challenges, smear campaigns, and even personal threats. But this time, they were not alone. The community they had built, drivers, employees, supporters, and allies from around the world, rallied around them. Grassroots movements sprang up in cities across the globe, advocating for DriverUp's model and pushing for reforms in labor laws. As the conflict escalated, Marcus and Alexander realized that they were at the center of a pivotal moment in economic history. The choices they made and the battles they fought would help determine the shape of the global economy for decades to come. Standing together at the forefront of this global movement, Marcus and Alexander felt the weight of their responsibility, but they also felt a sense of hope and purpose stronger than ever before. They knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way. As they prepared for the next phase of their journey, Marcus turned to Alexander and said, "You know, when we started this, I never imagined we'd end up here." Alexander nodded, a smile playing on his lips. "Neither did I, but I couldn't imagine being anywhere else." Together, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to write the next chapter in their ongoing story of innovation, perseverance, and the relentless pursuit of a better future for all. As DriverUp continued its global expansion, Marcus and Alexander found themselves at the forefront of a new technological revolution. Artificial intelligence and automation were rapidly transforming the landscape of work, presenting both unprecedented opportunities and daunting challenges. The advent of self-driving vehicles was particularly disruptive to DriverUp's model. While the technology promised increased safety and efficiency, it also threatened the livelihoods of millions of drivers worldwide. Marcus and Alexander knew they needed to act quickly to stay ahead of this seismic shift. Rather than resist the change, they decided to embrace it, but on their own terms. They launched an ambitious initiative called DriverUp AI, aimed at integrating AI and automation into their platform in a way that augmented rather than replaced human workers. The first phase of DriverUp AI involved developing advanced driver assistance systems that worked alongside human drivers. improving safety and efficiency while allowing drivers to focus on customer service and route optimization. But Marcus and Alexander didn't stop there. They invested heavily in AI research, partnering with leading universities and tech companies to explore ways of using artificial intelligence to create new job opportunities. This led to the development of AI co-pilots, sophisticated AI assistants that could handle navigation, communication, and basic decision-making, allowing drivers to take on more complex roles as ride managers. As ride managers, DriverUp's workers oversaw multiple autonomous vehicles, handled exceptional situations, and provided personalized service for premium rides. This new role required additional skills, so Marcus and Alexander expanded DriverUp's education programs, offering free AI and tech training to all their drivers. The transition wasn't smooth. Many drivers were initially resistant to the changes, fearing job losses. Traditional taxi companies and some labor unions accused DriverUp of accelerating the automation of jobs. Meanwhile, tech purists argued that the company wasn't embracing automation aggressively enough. Marcus and Alexander found themselves walking a tightrope, balancing technological progress with their commitment to worker empowerment. They held town halls, engaged in public debates, and worked tirelessly to refine their approach based on feedback from drivers and customers alike. Their efforts began to pay off. The ride manager model proved successful, with customer satisfaction scores soaring and drivers reporting higher job satisfaction and better pay. Other companies started to take notice, with some adopting similar approaches to integrating AI into their workflows. But as DriverUp's AI initiatives gained momentum, they also attracted attention from regulators and policymakers worldwide. Questions about data privacy, algorithmic bias, and the long-term implications of AI on employment became hot-button issues. Marcus and Alexander once again found themselves at the center of a global debate. They were called to testify before congressional committees, EU panels, and UN special sessions. They used these platforms to advocate for responsible AI development and the importance of keeping humans in the loop. Their message resonated with many, but also made them targets. Tech giants, seeing DriverUp as a threat to their AI dominance, launched aggressive campaigns to undermine the company's efforts. Meanwhile, a new wave of neo-Luddites gained traction, arguing against any form of AI in the workplace. As the pressure mounted, Marcus and Alexander's partnership faced its greatest test yet. The stress of navigating these complex technological and ethical issues took its toll, leading to disagreements and sleepless nights. Marcus, ever the optimist, pushed for rapid AI adoption, believing it was the key to creating new opportunities for workers. Alexander, more cautious, worried about moving too fast and alienating their core user base. Their disagreements came to a head during a crucial board meeting where they were to decide on the next phase of DriverUp AI. The debate grew heated, with both men passionately defending their positions. For a moment, it seemed like their differing visions might tear the company apart. But then, something remarkable happened. As they argued, they began to realize that their different perspectives were actually complementary. Marcus's vision for the future was tempered by Alexander's pragmatism, while Alexander's caution was balanced by Marcus's innovative spirit. In that moment of clarity, they crafted a new approach, one that combined bold technological advancement with careful, ethical implementation. They called it Humane AI, a framework for developing artificial intelligence that put human needs and values at the center of technological progress. The Humane AI initiative became DriverUp's new North Star, guiding its technological development and business strategy. It involved not just developing new AI systems, but also creating ethical guidelines for AI use, establishing transparency in algorithmic decision-making, and continually educating both workers and customers about the role of AI in the platform. As they unveiled Humane AI to the world, Marcus and Alexander stood united, their partnership stronger than ever. They knew that the road ahead would be challenging, filled with technological, ethical, and regulatory hurdles. But they also knew that together, they had the vision, the experience, and the determination to navigate these uncharted waters. Looking out at the faces of their team, a diverse group of drivers, engineers, ethicists, and administrators from all over the world, Marcus and Alexander felt a sense of pride and purpose. They had built more than just a company. They had created a movement that was helping to shape the future of work in the age of AI. As they stepped off the stage, ready to face the next chapter in their journey, Alexander turned to Marcus with a smile. "You know," he said, "I think we might just change the world." Marcus nodded, his eyes bright with determination. "We already are, my friend. We already are."